you got an incredible story, incredible ministry. I'd like to find out more about it. So first off, tell me a little bit about what interested you in what really got you going on this path that you're on, and you just tell us a little bit about your upbringing and.
Sure.
Yeah, sounds good.
I grew up in the church. I was actually a pastor's kid. Walked with the Lord, but kind of did my own thing a little bit in my teenage years. And it wasn't until I had cancer when I was 20, and even actually when I got worse with cancer, that I really started to think a lot about spiritual things. And I kind of halfway thought about it before, and I'd done some stuff related to it, but that was what really was like my midlife crisis at the age of 21, where I realized I think I've wasted most of my life. Like, God had done some good things in my life, but most of it I lived for me. And I was tired of wasting my life living for me. So I was like, God, I don't know how long I have, whether it's, one more day or 100 more years, but God, I am tired of wasting my life living for me. And that changed a lot. And so I had cancer for more than 3 years, and now I've been cancer free for a number of years. But that was how I became passionate about healing ministry.
So as far as with your cancer, you've got cancer at the age of 20, which is horrific to begin with, but then you have this revelation of wasting your life. Most 21-year-olds have no clue what you went through and where you ended up really thinking, geez, there's got to be more.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get to the next step though, as far as with being healed and where you're at?
So I did do chemotherapy and radiation. I spent 2 years and 8 months trying to get better, doing every form of alternative means, and radically changed my diet and supplements and so forth. And it greatly helped, but it wasn't getting me better. And so when I did finally do chemotherapy 2 years and 8 months into the cancer process, there was a lot of things that happened they couldn't explain. I never threw up, I never lost my hair, even though there was a 100% chance of that. I was on adriamycin, which was the chemo drug for women who have breast cancer, and never had an issue. It wasn't easy, don't get me wrong. I slept more, I was a little more forgetful, I would get some dizzying headaches, especially in the beginning part of chemo. My body detoxified it pretty well because I was very extreme in my efforts. And God brought me through. But I would have loved to have never done chemo. I would have loved to have never done radiation. And that caused me to have a huge passion to have other people not have to go through what I went through.
So when you say you were extreme, talk about that a little bit.
Very. I spent 2 years and 8 months trying to get better as if my life depended on it by doing everything possibly alternatively. Like when I was diagnosed with cancer, I had a baseball-sized tumor in my chest, and it had already metastasized to both sides of my neck and both armpits. And so I was already not in the best place when I was starting the cancer process. There was a fair amount of bulk of cancer in my body. And so I didn't halfway pursue alternative health healing. I was extreme, like 80% of my diet was raw vegetables, mostly organic, a little bit of low glycemic fruit, a little bit of like wild salmon, some organic eggs, brown rice. That was about it. That was the extent of my diet. Okay. I was juicing multiple times a day. My parents spent massive amounts of money on me. My parents were never wealthy, but they spent probably $150,000 on me over that 2 years and 8 months, just on any kind of supplement and everything like that. And I tried everything out there, some of which was amazing, some of which was not amazing. And it was definitely a learning process that way. Yeah.
So to get the cancer free, at what point did you realize I'm cancer free, and how did you get there?
Well, so when I finally realized like I'm actually not getting better by all my efforts in terms of alternative health stuff, and I then decided, okay, I'm going to go do chemo. So when I did chemo, I did 6 cycles of ABVD. That was the cocktail: adriamycin, bleomycin, vinblastine, and something else, which is a D. And so when I did it, so after halfway through, they did a CAT scan to see where things were at. And so when I did that CAT scan, it showed that the tumors the masses had shrunk by about 2/3, 3/4. but I could still very much still feel lumps in my neck and everything. The actual really beautiful thing about me having waited that period of time was in that period of time, PET scans were being used regularly. I don't know if they were invented in that period of time, but when I first was diagnosed with cancer back at the end of 2001, like I never did a PET scan. And it wasn't until a few years later when I went in, because the kind of cancer I had created scar tissue. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, nodular sclerosis, and so the lymph nodes created scar tissue, and so like I still have masses in my body, but it's scar tissue that's left residual from the cancer on my body, and so it was beautiful. In that waiting time, I would have had to have done probably a fairly invasive surgery to try and remove a bunch of lymph nodes out of my chest and everything like that, but because of that time that was waited, actually, it worked out actually to my advantage, because in that time, then they could do a PET scan. When I did a PET scan, it showed up as even though I had lumps still, that had shrunk dramatically, but I still had some lumps on my armpits and in my neck, that all of that, there was no cancer in any of that. It was just, wow. It was just residual scar tissue, and there was a very, very, very faint mark on my chest, and so when they did radiation on that spot, then that disappeared when I did a PET scan afterwards. And so they didn't really like to use the term like cancer-free, but like I was in remission at that point is what the doctor said, and it's been almost 17 years. So
this brings us to this is foundational. That's why I kind of let it go a little long.
Yeah. Well, just let me jump in. I mean, like when I would go in to the cancer center. I had a County Medical Center there in Minneapolis, and when I would go and do CAT scans and all these different things, like the nurses would literally look at my charts and they'd be absolutely shocked. Like, this guy has been taking X number of months of adriamycin in his body, and he's grown a beard while taking adriamycin, and they couldn't believe it, because it's a 100% chance I'd lose my hair. It's a 100% chance that I would vomit, and I didn't do either one once. My hair thinned just ever so slightly, but you'd have had to look very closely and know where to look to see that. But yeah, and I can't say like it was because everybody prayed for me. I think that definitely factored in, but I also think that the radical, the stuff that I'd learned in that 2 years and 8 months and that I'd put into practice in terms of radically detoxifying my body made a huge difference. And so I'm very grateful to God, to my parents, to the people who helped provide what we needed in order for me to be able to do all those things.
Well, in the medical field in itself.
For sure.
I mean, This is, without the medical field, you're not here.
More than likely.
Yeah.
That's how it looked.
But what is really cool is what you're doing now. Mm-hmm. And I want to get to that. And we're going to talk a little bit more on the next segment.